Hey guys, Moose here. Welcome back to another episode of Life is Feudal Forest Village. I apologize that this did not go up at the time it was supposed to on Wednesday. Going up, well, obviously day after on Thursday. I'm also going to be behind on what is normally scheduled for Thursdays. I basically, short version, I don't know that I'm sick. I don't think it's that necessarily, but I basically like eviscerated my throat and I just can't speak for an extended period of time comfortably or without substantial pain. I think we're out of hide, which is somewhat surprising. Or we're not out, but it's like not close by. Then I should just trade away the tools. There's very little reason to hold on to them. Okay, and where is Hyde going? Hyde is... Oh, it's going there. Well, actually... Why don't you... Yeah, okay, that's fine. That should work out, because they're both more or less full, so they'll just slowly trickle in. That'll get clothing production going. We're actually doing okay on clothing. So maybe they don't really need to be working for too much longer. Mills are doing just fine. How are these jokers doing? Flax is actually low. I don't really get that. I feel like these don't need to be operating anymore. I'm sure that'll be fine. I just want to mitigate our flax. We're using a lot of flax. So I want to kind of scale it back a little. And the thing is, I could definitely trade tools for hide too. Because I'm still producing plenty of steel. Actually, not that much. Hopefully it kind of kicks up a bit and we get some more. Should just... certain things that I don't want to be consumed by people. Or I don't want to have them anymore, I guess is the point. That seems fine. Biggest threat of running out of something is... Oh, we're out of hay. I'm glad I caught that, actually. Where is our... It's only 90. That's enough. Okay, so that's going to be an issue. We need to address that immediately. So we are fresh out of hay, so stuff's going to start dying as soon as winter hits here. It seems like we've got pretty good amount of hay in all of the pastures and stuff. We just only ran out just now. So we're actually, like, sort of okay. We just need to address it immediately and not wait. Because if we wait, it's gonna bite us in the ass. That's okay, we'll resolve it. But yeah, it's weird. I don't think I'm, like, properly sick with anything. I think it's just... There have been... So, my job at work is... I'm a planner. That's the job title, basically. And a planner in a manufacturing environment kind of is the bridge between production and supply chain. Supply chain gets material, negotiates with suppliers, talks to them, and sources material. handles all the contracts and how much we're paying for each thing, and they have financial targets and stuff like that. Production just takes material and turns it into a product, generally. But you need a bridge between those two because there's a lot of details that maybe don't get taken care of if you just have those two groups. So in between you have planners. And planners are saying like, alright, you're going to run this material on this day, this material on this day, and they kind of set out, okay, well, here's how you're going to run. And handle the actual process of running from a procedural standpoint. Oftentimes, say you have a factory that's making microchips or semiconductors or something for phones, you'd get like a big order from, let's say you're getting orders from Samsung and Apple for their respective phones. You'd say, well, they're slightly different, they have different specifications, so you'd get big orders for each one, which would have delivery dates, and you'd say, okay, well, if I run... You don't generally want to run them right when they're asked for, because what winds up happening is if they're different, you have to switch the tools. You have to change the tooling on the machines that you have. So there's a changeover, and usually that's a tedious process. And it's also a process that invites potential for error. So you don't want to do that any more than you absolutely have to. Because you minimize error. The less you have to change, the less errors your guys are going to make. Basically, a lot of good design is minimizing how much people have to actually do. Give them a routine and make it as consistent as humanly possible. Only make them do something when they absolutely... So a lot of it kind of doesn't, maybe not revolves around, but it definitely heavily involves, you know, managing changeovers. So you wouldn't want to just say, well, Samsung and Apple both want their product, like what we're selling them, to be delivered every week. But maybe I don't need to make it every week. Maybe it would be better if I just did one big production run of Samsung stuff for a month ahead of time so that I have it good to go, and then do Apple for a month, and then do, you know, alternate that way so that I'm not changing over too much, and I can have nice, big, long production runs. And it's more complicated than that, because typically you're not going to be making that much product, and you're not going to have that little variety. So you'll have different things. Maybe, let's say, the breadboard or the circuit board, you source that from 3 or 4 different vendors that are selling it to you for you to make your product, hypothetically, if it exists on a circuit board. Maybe one of the vendors is slightly different. Maybe one of them requires slightly different instructions for the people on the line to process them. Maybe one of them has a yield issue and they screwed up some... I mean, you wouldn't have it with a circuit board typically, but, you know, you never know. Maybe they, you know, something fell into the whatever vat they were making it. I don't know. I don't really know how breadboards are made. Or circuit board, I don't even know. Is breadboard the one where you can just kind of plug stuff in and take it out as like a test thing, or is breadboard the actual typical one? Anyway, you get the idea. The point is, like, you can have products that come from different places and they have issues, you know. Maybe they mixed in something slightly conductive in it, and it, like, potentially conducts electricity in a way that causes something to short circuit, which obviously is a problem. Okay, we kind of screwed up. Cow died, but it's whatever. Really hope they start moving that. Okay, they're moving. Some of these I don't know. Okay, they're fine. These guys are like... Our caravan guys are busy as hell, man. They're doing stuff. Okay, good. They're using the hay. So it's taking a while to move it, but it's kind of going. just not at a reasonable speed. This scares me because they're gonna die out very quickly. Sheep, I'm fine with starving. Obviously, it's not a good thing, but I think it's gonna be resolved shortly. So anyway, point is, I have to kind of manage the connection between supply chain and production. Because if there's a hiccup in supply chain, I can't let it affect production. Or I have to minimize the impact. And if there's a hiccup in production, I have to work with supply chain to minimize the financial impact, because you don't... Imagine, like, if there was some major issue on production, you had to shut down for a week, which is horrible. Like, if you have a manufacturing company, you shut down for a week, like, that's all hands on deck. That's a really big issue. So, hypothetically, if that happened, you know, what part of it shut down? Is there another part of your business that can keep running? Because maybe that would be a good idea to save money. Maybe it's easier to mitigate the shutdown if you can spread it out. Maybe it's less of a financial impact if you can spread it out. You basically get a new, like, fatal bottleneck. So if it's early in the process, maybe you have a bunch of WIP, which is work in progress, that you can push ahead and work on and all this stuff. So, and the other thing is, if everything shuts down completely, well, your vendor didn't shut down, or your supplier didn't shut down, so they're still sending you stuff to build with. So they're sending you material, what are you going to do with it? It costs money to hold it, you have to pay for it, that's money out the door. You have to store it, that's money out the door. And you're not making anything with it, so you're just wasting money at that point. You don't need it then. One of the big, I don't necessarily want to say advances, because I don't think that's quite accurate, but one of the improvements, I guess, in supply chain and manufacturing in general lately, which was always the ideal, but I don't think was ever necessarily possible, is called lean manufacturing, or just-in-time, JIT. Basically, the core principle is that if I'm an operation, say I'm a smelter, and this wouldn't necessarily work with a smelting operation, but just imagine that your job is to put a bunch of crap into a big furnace, and then the output is steel or iron or whatever metal. Ah, clay digger died, that's fine. Okay, no more animals are dying, we're good. Most of them have been replaced. The sheep have already reproduced, that's hilarious. Are they baby sheep, or are they all the same? Okay. So you have an input, you have an output. Very basic. It doesn't matter what it is, because this applies to pretty much everything. The best case scenario for you is that the second you're ready for more ore, it's just there. It's delivered right then. Not before then, not after then. The second you need it, it's there. So there's a number of ways to do this. Obviously, when you're dealing with stuff that might be shipped over from other countries, you can't just have it be perfect like that. It's more complex than that suggests. So what you do, there's different systems that you can put into place where you have, depending on your predictability, basically the more predictable you are, the better you can get. If you're not a very predictable manufacturing company, like your demand is variable or things go wrong all the time, it's very hard to do this, but you can really schedule it down to the minute if you really know your process, and it's a consistent process. You can get really cool, like interesting with it and really be detailed. That doesn't happen very often. I think it's difficult to do, but like one example would be, imagine you're making a car. So from your perspective as a consumer, assuming that you're a consumer, you maybe work in a manufacturing plant, I don't know, but if you're a consumer, you look at a car, it's, you know, there's a door, there's a hood, there's a roof, there's the side, there's all these different components, right? But the thing is, most of them are made out of metal, and most of them are not, like, there's nothing special really about the door, right? It's just a door. Mostly it's sheet metal. And yeah, it has to be cut and shaped and stuff, but what if you had most of the components that go into the car just made out of sheet metal? Do you need to order a door then? No, you just order the sheet metal and you make the door yourself right then and there. Now you control the manufacturing of the doors, and all you need is sheet metal. So you standardize your materials such that pretty much the majority of your work is just reshaping, like, bending or what. I don't really understand sheet metal type stuff, but you know, you're just working on sheet metal. So all you have to do is worry about, okay, well, how much sheet metal do I need today? And it doesn't even, you could even do it by hour. Because you're dealing with large enough quantities that you could actually do that and minimize your warehouse space. And on top of that, sheet metal is fairly dense. Like, from a storage standpoint, you don't have much of an issue because it's not like a large, I mean, it may be large, but you have a lot in one place. I don't really know how to explain that other than saying it's fairly dense. But yeah, the point is, if you're doing it yourself, then now you've opened up this option to like, well, all the material's kind of the same, so just give me this when I need it. And now it's much easier to have a lot of flexibility about when something is delivered then. Because you just say, well, okay, it takes this much sheet metal to fill a truck, that much accounts for 2 hours of production, so give me a delivery every 2 hours. Delivery of sheet metal every 2 hours, and then you would probably want to say, like, get it here half an hour or an hour before we need it, maybe, to account for unloading time and in case something goes wrong. Or maybe you have more of that, you have a buffer. I don't know. Why did I... That was stupid, I shouldn't have done. I was thinking of the flax, which is already harvesting. Oh, whatever. We have so much food, it doesn't matter. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool min-maxy kind of stuff, because you might see, like, an RTS or something, right? And they... Okay, are we moving flax? And, you know, obviously there's, like, oh, this is the right build order, but also there's, like, resource management saying, like, well, you should always have this many on the mineral patch in StarCraft, because that's the most efficient number. Life is full of moments like that when you're making products. So, I don't know, it's interesting. And you can kind of apply some of the principles to other products as well. Even if it's not, like, a manufactured product. Stuff like service, you have similar mentalities. Restaurants, you know. Any food that isn't purchased at the end of the night, depending on how... Well, depending on the restaurant. In theory, in a very general sense, you could consider that any food that a restaurant purchases that isn't consumed by the end of the night could be considered wasted. Which is money that they've spent that... Basically, they're throwing away money at that point, which is a big deal. So you have to think, like, that business has to have this really clear idea of how much people are going to order and when, so but there's a cost to running out, too. So it's this weird, like, I really enjoy those puzzles, and that's why I like my job. It's like, how do you manage that? How do you understand that? Because there's math to it. Like, this is a major problem that every business faces, pretty much. So people, like, studied this and developed formulas and logic, and it's crazy and it's interesting. Because you may not think like you just go to a restaurant. You may not realize there's work that you see, you know, okay, well, the waiter has to take my order, and then they have to bring it to the chef, and the chef has to cook it, and then the waiter has to take my credit card and put it in the machine, and someone had to make the machine, and then the credit card company does something, and there's, like, it connects through the internet to do blah, 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 blah. But there's so much more that goes into it that you would never even think of if you weren't exposed to it, which is why I like talking about this stuff, because you don't... It's invisible. You never know. But there's so much work that goes into just intelligently managing supplies. Even in sort of, it's not really a service industry. It's kind of a service industry. You're really buying the food, not the service, but you are sort of buying the service a bit, so I don't know. It's a combination of the two in a restaurant. But yeah, you may not consider that, you know, there's a price to pay if you screw that up, because I've gone to restaurants and I've ordered salads and I've seen brown bits on the lettuce and I've been like, no, fuck that. I don't want to eat here anymore, and I'm not going to order the salad if I do, because I want fresh salad. I don't, you know, and I'm picky, but, you know, I don't like salad that's brown. Even a little. It bothers the hell out of me. So, that's, you know, that's something that you have to, not you, whoever's handling that for that restaurant has to think about. The better you are at that, the fresher your food is, the more you save by not overspending on stuff that you don't use. There's a tremendous amount of value for the business in that. Trade at the market. Okay, so it's just saying okay because it's already made the trade and I can make it again. It's fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think all that stuff is really interesting, and it's a very complicated, detailed situation that it's very hard to handle. It's kind of like, you can compare it. I should have been making this comparison earlier, but you can think about it in Life is Feudal. Do I want to waste space on storing resources if I don't have to? What if I find the most resource, like the most value-dense product, which is sort of from a what's reasonable standpoint, I go with wool, right? I probably could get more value out of steel tools, which maybe that's worth building up a ton of those, but it's also a fairly large amount of work to make them. What if I just stored wool? Wool and food, and I stored nothing else, and I just said, hey, I have 0 steel tools, so I'm going to order 50 from the market, and then the people come pick them up, and then as soon as it goes to 0, I'll order 50 again. Or maybe I have a reorder point at 25, and I say when I hit 25, I'll order another 50. You know, there's a lot of... you could do it here. And maybe then I don't need so much storage. Maybe. Probably not, because it's food. And it would also be kind of pointless to min-max it that much. But you can kind of see where if you're buying property to set up your business, you don't want to buy a bunch of warehouses that just need to sit there and hold material, which is money that's sitting in there that could be damaged, it could age, it could be replaced, it could be stolen. There's so much that could happen to it. When it's in your possession, you're liable for it, so it's better not to own it until you need it. So, anyway, I don't know. This is what I do for a living, and I think it's really interesting and fun to manage, so I love puzzles like this, where you're trying to figure out how much you need and when and all that. Anyway. That is going to do it for today's episode, so thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed my rambling about work. I find it really interesting, like I said. Hope you guys did too. If you did enjoy it, I stream Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays, 6 to 8 p.m. PST, 9 to 11 p.m. EST. Feel free to come by and check out a stream if you like. If not, thanks for watching here on YouTube, and I'll see you next time. Take care.